In 48 BC, Cleopatra was 21 years old, hiding in her own palace and about to be killed by her own brother. She had been stripped of her throne, exiled from Alexandria, and declared an enemy of Egypt. The most powerful city in the ancient world had turned against its own queen. Then Julius Caesar arrived, and everything changed. We have used advanced artificial intelligence to reconstruct Alexandria exactly as Cleopatra saw it in 48 BC, the wealthiest, most sophisticated city on Earth. A city of marble libraries, royal intrigues, and a harbour that controlled the trade of 3 continents. This is not the Hollywood story. This is the real Alexandria, and the real woman who used it as her weapon. To understand Cleopatra, you must first understand Alexandria. This was not just a city, it was the center of the known world. Our AI reconstruction strips away 2,000 years of history to show you what Julius Caesar saw when his ships entered the harbor in 48 BC. The great lighthouse of Alexandria, the Pharos, rose over 100 meters above the harbor, its fire visible from 50 kilometers at sea. It was the tallest structure on Earth after the pyramids. Below it, the harbor was a forest of masts, merchant vessels from Rome, Greece, Arabia, and India, unloading spices, silk, ivory, and grain onto docks that never slept. Alexandria controlled the grain supply of the entire Mediterranean world. Whoever held Alexandria held Rome by the throat. The city itself was built on a grid, unusual for the ancient world, with 2 massive boulevards crossing at its center. The royal quarter stretched along the eastern harbor, a complex of palaces, temples, and gardens so vast it occupied a third of the entire city. Our reconstruction shows you the royal palace as it stood in 48 BC. Colonnaded halls of white marble, floors of polished granite, gardens running down to the waterfront where royal barges sat decorated in gold and purple. This was Cleopatra's home, and she understood with absolute clarity that its survival depended entirely on her. Cleopatra VII was not Egyptian by blood. She was Macedonian Greek, a descendant of Ptolemy, one of Alexander the Great's generals who had claimed Egypt after Alexander's death. But she was the first ruler of her dynasty to learn the Egyptian language. She also spoke 9 others: Greek, Latin, Ethiopian, Hebrew, Arabic, and more. In a court where power was negotiated across cultural lines, language was her first weapon. Our reconstruction shows you the Library of Alexandria, the greatest repository of knowledge in the ancient world, housing over 700,000 scrolls. Cleopatra had studied here. She was not the seductress of popular imagination. She was a trained philosopher, mathematician, and political strategist who had been prepared since childhood to rule the most complex kingdom on Earth. But in 48 BC, her brother Ptolemy XIII, 13 years old, controlled by powerful court advisors, had driven her out. She was camped in the desert outside Alexandria with a small army, unable to enter her own capital. The city she had been born to rule was occupied by her enemies. Then she received news that Julius Caesar had arrived in the harbor with his legions. She made a decision that would change the history of the world. What Cleopatra did next has been romanticized for 2,000 years. But the reality was colder and more brilliant than any romance. She could not enter Alexandria openly. Her brother's soldiers controlled every gate, so she had herself wrapped in a carpet, or, according to some accounts, a linen sack, and smuggled past the guards into the royal palace, directly into Caesar's presence. Our reconstruction shows you that palace at night. Torchlight on marble columns, the smell of the harbour drifting through open colonnades, Roman soldiers stationed at every entrance. And then a carpet unrolled on the floor, and the Queen of Egypt stood up. Caesar was 52. He had conquered Gaul, crossed the Rubicon, and fought his way across the Mediterranean. He had seen everything the ancient world had to offer. But he had never encountered anything like Cleopatra. Not because of her beauty. Ancient sources describe her as striking, but not conventionally beautiful, because of her intelligence. She spoke to him in perfect Latin. She understood Roman politics better than most Romans. She laid out with surgical precision exactly why an alliance between them served both their interests. Caesar had arrived in Alexandria to collect a debt. He left with the most powerful woman in the world as his ally. And the course of Roman history permanently altered. With Caesar's legions securing Alexandria, Cleopatra was restored to her throne. Our reconstruction shows you the city she reclaimed and what she did with it. She understood Alexandria not as an inheritance, but as an instrument. The city's wealth came from its port, its library, its position as the intersection of 3 continents. She invested in all of it. The streets of Alexandria in 48 BC were unlike anything else in the ancient world. Our reconstruction captures the sensory reality, the mixture of languages in the marketplace, Greek merchants negotiating with Egyptian priests, Roman soldiers navigating streets laid out by Macedonian engineers 3 centuries earlier, the smell of cedar and papyrus from the library district, the salt air from the harbour, the incense from the temple of Serapis rising over the rooftops. Cleopatra moved through this city as both queen and goddess. In Egyptian contexts, she presented herself as the goddess Isis. In Greek contexts, as a Hellenistic ruler. In Roman contexts, as a sovereign ally. She was not performing. She was code-switching with the precision of someone who understood that power is always a performance calibrated to its audience. Alexandria had taught her that. A city built at the intersection of 3 civilizations had produced a ruler who could speak to all of them. Cleopatra would rule Egypt for another 20 years after 48 BC, through Caesar's assassination, through her alliance with Mark Antony, through the final war that brought Rome to her gates. She died in 30 BC, 40 years old, the last ruler of an independent Egypt. After her death, Alexandria became a Roman province. The dynasty that had ruled for 3 centuries ended with her. But what she built in those 20 years, the alliances, the cultural synthesis, the demonstration that a woman could outmaneuver the most powerful men on earth, outlasted every army that ever marched through Alexandria's streets. The city that made her is mostly gone now, swallowed by the sea, buried under the modern city, lost to 2,000 years of conquest and reconstruction. But in our AI reconstruction, you can still walk its streets, stand in its harbour, and understand what it produced. Alexandria made Cleopatra, and Cleopatra briefly held the entire ancient world in her hands. If this reconstruction brought Alexandria to life for you, let us know in the comments which historical figure or lost city you want to see rebuilt next. Thank you for walking with us through the Alexandria of Cleopatra. Until the next reconstruction.